I like going up against lumbering giants. We can beat them because we're closer to the customers. We're faster and flexible and nimble at what we do.
Wow. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun. Richard Leurig, president of Accruent, with nearly 30 years of experience in fintech, real estate, and enterprise software. Richard has scaled businesses from both the garage and the boardroom.
I was a software engineer, and I got involved in going out with sales and explaining things to customers. What I learned very early on is from that point forward, it's been a matter of how do you break down and simplify things. Yeah.
What was one of the big pivotal moments that shaped you?
In 2007, mortgage lenders were going out of business every single day. In a crisis of that magnitude, you realize a few key important principles that work in any crisis situation. Number one,
hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Lead the Team. Today, what do you get when a startup founder, tech visionary, and enterprise executive all live in the same person? Well, today's guest, Richard Leurig, president of Accruent, well, when he's leading strategy, growth, and innovation across a global organization, that's him. With nearly 30 years of experience in fintech, real estate, and enterprise software, Richard has scaled businesses from both the garage and the boardroom, with major office locations at Austin, New Orleans, London, Amsterdam. Accruent serves more than 10,000 customers in a wide range of industries in more than 150 countries around the world. But y'all, what happens when the path forward isn't totally clear and the pressure to deliver is massive? Well, in this interview, we're going to dig into this with Richard, the pivotal leadership moments that actually shaped him, from co-founding a startup in mortgage tech to driving transformation at billion-dollar companies, and hopefully revealing the surprise philosophy that he's used to spark innovation without blowing things up along the way. He calls it the better everyday way. And once you hear it, you might never lead the same way again. Richard, welcome to Lead the Team, my friend.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to be here.
So what was one of the big pivotal moments that shaped you and your leadership philosophy?
Yes, I think it would be easy to say that COVID reshaped a lot of people and a lot of people's philosophies, but I would go back a little bit further than that and look at the mortgage crisis and the mortgage meltdown in 2007 through 2010. And a lot was going on then as mortgage lenders were going out of business. We had customers who were going out of business every single day. And there was a period of time where our team felt like, are we going to have any customers when this is done? What's going to happen? And it's when you manage through those tough times that you realize a few key important principles that work in any crisis situation. Number one, we had to be very transparent. What was going well? What wasn't going well? Where were we as a company and what were we doing to support our customers? Our customers needed us to be there because many of our customers were actually absorbing the bankrupt and the insolvent mortgage entities, and they were actually growing their portfolios. And so they needed us to be engaged and involved and right there with them. And so the last piece of this was what was really important is throughout all of that, it's painting a picture and a vision for the future. So it would have been easy for our teams to say, I'm in the wrong industry. I shouldn't be here. Our customers are struggling. And I think what you have to do is be transparent on one end, and on the other end, paint a picture of the future and the vision of how the company will evolve, how the products will evolve, how you'll support the customers that you have in a better way. They needed to be more efficient coming out of the mortgage crisis. So we were able to actually achieve innovation during that period of time through really voice of customer and understanding what our customers were going through and merging large mortgage lending portfolios together.
Wow. That was a traumatic time for the entire nation. And here you are leading a company at the center of everything was kind of coming down all at the same time. What did you like this idea of transparency and the vision for the future? It seems so challenging to paint a vision for the future when you're in survival mode, right? As an organization, what were the mental gymnastics you were having to go through as a leader to paint a rosier or a hopeful vision for the future when you were concerned you're about to lose all your customers?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's not an easy feat in a crisis of that magnitude. I would say that what helped, though, is that transparency piece I'm talking about allows you to then get feedback directly because everyone knows where we sat at that moment in time.
Hmm.
Everyone knew along the way, every single month, what was happening in the industry and what the challenges were that were before the mortgage industry in general. And so, what you have to do in those times of crisis sometimes is take a step back and look at, but this
Hmm.
will end and it will end at some point. And the customers that we have to treasure and they're precious to us. And we need to understand what products and
Hmm.
services are we going to be providing them when we get out of this. And I think that actually
Hmm.
motivated, the teams in order to allow them to step back and say, if I were going to provide this service in the future, in some cases, to some of our customers, it was much larger portfolios of loans that they were taking in as different other lending institutions went under. And, it
Hmm.
changed our perspective on what was a large lender and how would you
Okay.
process things for that lender through all of the mortgage services that we provided. So it does take that, but I would say that the most important thing is carving out the time to look towards the future.
Hmm.
It's so easy to wake up every morning and realize that you're in the middle of a crisis. You've got to have that mind share, that time that you set aside to say, but this will end. And as we all know, with all economic uncertainties, things that go on with customers, it always ends. And when it ends, the question is, are you positioned with the products and services that you need to support what emerges from the other side?
Yeah, and you like a genius because now we have the opposite problem, right? We don't have enough housing. Where you're like,
Yeah.
one day it feels like the world's about to blow up, but they're going to need us more than 20
Yeah.
years or 15 years from now. They're going to need us more than ever.
Right,
Is
right. That's exactly what happens. Yes.
And there'll be this
Um,
thing called AI that I know you've only seen in Terminator movies, but we're going to use it to fuel our portfolio to the next level. I don't know.
right.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a real visionary moment. And I'm curious, and we get off this topic, but you personally, what were you feeling at the time when you were on the drop of the roller coaster? And did you question your industry decision at that point? You're like, why did I get into this stuff in the first place?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because when I got involved, it was shortly before this happened in the mortgage industry, and
Oh
you
boy.
think you think at that time, hey, this is an industry that's been growing for a long period of time. It'll continue to grow. It'll continue to be stable, and of course, this happens, right? You wake up every day, and I think you do this as an executive honestly, whether you're in a high growth mode or whether you're in an economic crisis or some kind of crisis mode, you wake up every day going, how can I actually survive today? And that for me lasts about 5 minutes. And then
Oh
I turn
yeah.
my sights to, okay, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of things we have to do today, and we have to keep our eye moving forward.
Hmm.
We have to keep looking forward. And I think that's simple to say, but it requires the kind of the fortitude and the grit to basically say,
Hmm.
we're going to conquer this mortgage crisis and we're going to emerge on the other side. And, I think that's how I got through every day.
Hmm. So what is the better everyday way and where did this idea originate?
Yeah, it's kind of a philosophy I started a number of years ago, which was I would come in to an organization and there would be all sorts of problems within the organization or opportunities, as you may say. And what usually happened is the teams sometimes had fatigue over the number of things that they had to overcome and what they had to do to take the company to the next level, to raise the bar to the next level. And the problem is when you list all of those things out, it can be a long and very daunting list of things that a company has to go through. You like to boil it down to the 3 to 5 most strategic things, as we all do as executives. But the reality is, within the rank and file, within the trenches of everybody doing the work, you basically have teams who are struggling every single day. And if you lay on them gigantic changes and shifts that have to happen in one day, in one week, oftentimes you fail. And that's what I was seeing organizations do. And I think I fell into that trap early in my career. So the better every day emerged because I started speaking to my teams and I said, don't worry about the long-term things that we have to do. What you have to worry about is
Mm.
prioritizing what's right in front of us and looking at each week, each month, each quarter and saying, are we better than we were last week, last month, last quarter? And at the end of the year, those things add up.
Mm.
And what that eventually turned into, that better every week, better every month, was the better every day way, which is
Mm.
really how in each and every day are we becoming better, but not trying to solve every single problem every day. And so it's a philosophy. You could call it, and maybe in a bad way, incrementalism. But the reality is most organizations cannot absorb large boulders each and every day. But what they can absorb is changes for the better each and every day. And when those changes occur over time, you actually emerge with monumental changes and shifts in the organization. And it's helped me lead people through times where they often are looking at the shifts that they have to go through as leaders, as team members, and make them understand that, it doesn't have to be perfect tomorrow. What it has to do is it has to be better tomorrow than it is today.
Yeah, it seems like a magical, like a mantra. One, it's simple, and a lot of people can remember it, which, so many corporate initiatives have just died because people can't remember it or can't figure out what to actually do with it. Uh, and it reduces, it's like it really increases focus. And it sounds like most importantly, reduces overwhelmedness. People who are overwhelmed aren't productive. They're like going a lot of directions. They're scared, analysis paralysis. And this incremental improvement thing probably gets a better app in some companies because I don't know. I've worked for some organizations back in the day, and you're like, yeah, you're getting better, but you're not getting better fast enough. It's, you're not going fast enough. We need to go harder. We need to go farther. And I believe that was probably right, but it's not necessarily actionable to go faster and harder when you already feel like you're going fast. So how do you respond to the leader and say, well, yeah, that's sure that's nice, but that's not going to be fast enough for me as a leader.
Yeah, it's funny. It I think the pace of change, the pace of where you're going as an organization still can be fast under the better everyday way.
Okay.
What it requires is for you to prioritize what are the most important things facing the organization right now.
Hmm.
Um, we
Right
often
things.
we often at Accruent talk about what are you doing on Monday,
Hmm.
right? And when somebody says, I've got all these things facing me, I've got all these challenges, and we go, but what are you doing on Monday?
Yeah.
What are you doing
Hmm.
next Monday to actually make the changes you need? And it's related to your whole notion of moving faster. We want to move fast, but we want to move fast on the right things.
Hmm.
And I think that's what this simplification tries to overcome is bring to light that yes, there's a long list of things, but they may not be the most important things of what we want to do on Monday.
Yeah.
And you can still, in fact, what you do is you tend to move faster when you have that focus and clarity on what are the top priority items. Oftentimes, I've seen leaders go into organizations and say, move faster. We need more stuff. We need you to
Yeah.
have more products, more
Yes.
innovation. The problem is more products, more innovation, and more stuff sometimes is not the right stuff. It isn't what you need to be doing. You need to do those things in the right order and in the right way. And if you do that, you actually can provide faster innovation. But just innovation for innovation's sake
Yeah.
doesn't really, hey, we're going to deliver a lot of releases on products. Hey, I often come into organizations and they say on a product release cycle, we're going to start releasing every day. Well, why are you going to do that? Well, because everyone else is doing that. And
Yes.
you go, but do you know what you're going to release every
Hmm.
day?
Hmm.
And that's the question that kind of throws people for a loop sometimes.
I love that. And for the leaders listening, I'm envisioning your thousands of employees sitting down at their desk. And like that's where the rubber meets the road. What are they on Monday morning sitting down doing at their desk? Are they checking emails? Are they just responding to emails? Are they innovating? Are they working on the big project that's the right thing that's going to move the needle forward? And I don't think most leaders probably think about it to that granular level. Like, what's the action on Monday morning they're going to take? And honestly, probably the biggest challenge is they're going to make the choice. You can't choose for them.
Yeah.
You can give them the guidance, but they've got to do that and make that choice. They know what's most important. They got to think about it and position that first. Now, thinking about, I mean, my gosh, your career already, you've done this, you scaled businesses. What's one business you've scaled or one change that you've seen that you've really put this into practice and seen the result across the board?
Yeah. So when a number of years ago, I was involved in I worked in corporate development and product development in an organization that acquired a company called MoneyGram at the time. Now the company is called MoneyGram.
Yes.
And
Okay.
at that time, MoneyGram had been separated from Western Union and was, quite frankly, stalled in its growth, stalled in what it was doing. And we went in to the organization, and the beauty of that organization was they had a lot of passionate people. And I think if you talk to me about what drives a company and drives the changes that you need, it's the passion in the employees. They had a lot of passionate people for the product and for the company, but they were trying to overcome some very, very big obstacles. And those obstacles in front of them were everything from, how do we do foreign currency exchange in every country we're doing business in,
Hmm.
to how do we roll out a new point of sale technology across the world to service the customers better, and everything in between. And it was overwhelming to the employees. It was daunting to what they needed to do. And so we had to break these things down. And we actually had, oddly enough, this is before I called it the better everyday way. We had simplification meetings where people were overcomplicating matters and saying it's going to take us years to solve these problems. And we said, well, let's have a simplification meeting to talk about pricing. Let's have a simplification meeting to talk about point of sale technology. Let's have a simplification meeting. And those simplification meetings resulted in what were the most important things we could do now to change the trajectory of the company, to change what we were doing. And that led MoneyGram to doing a number of things, including signing up Walmart eventually as we built point of sale technology that fit Walmart's paradigm and requirements, grew the company substantially, integrated our transaction processing technology into major banks around the world, into major post banks around the world. All of that by taking a step back and saying, we can't do everything, but what can we do? We can solve for integrating
Hmm.
into banks' systems, and we can solve that through a standard product. And we can get that done pretty quickly. We used to call it changes in 100 days. How
Hmm.
could we make changes in 100 days that actually changed things? And I don't think that goes against my better everyday philosophy, because what it did is it required that focus and priority I was discussing around that. And so it allowed the company to start to grow and emerge and actually compete with Western Union. And
Wow.
we used to discuss it and say that, and quite frankly, Ben, around my whole career, I like going up against lumbering giants, bigger companies where you're going up against them and they have difficulty moving. They have difficulty being fast and flexible and nimble. And oftentimes, if you use these philosophies, you can actually outrun them and tie them up and really topple the giants. And I really appreciate and like being in that situation because that allows you to leverage smart people doing smart things and doing it quickly to get those things done. But you have to do that on a scale. You know, these companies that have tens of thousands, you know, Accruent, we're up against companies that are smaller than us, same size as us, and larger than us by a huge amount. SAP, IBM, and so on. And I always tell the team, look, you know, we can beat the larger competitors. We can beat them because we're closer to the customers.
Yeah.
We're faster and flexible and nimble at what we do. And I like that challenge, and that's kind of been the basis for most of my career.
Oh, man. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun. I love this vision of, I love going up against lumbering giants and tying them up. That sounds like fun. Simplification meetings, changes 180 days. Um, this this is really strong idea here. And it seems like you're really, this is something, this is a strength of yours. Is the simplification? Is this like, I'm just curious, where does this philosophy come from? It almost sounds like from Zen Buddhism or essentialism, Greg McEwen, or some sort of like deeper worldview. And I just wondered if I'm onto something there or not.
No,
Ooh,
no, not
okay.
directly.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that came from. I think I think what happened was in my career, I was a software engineer and I got involved in going out with sales and explaining things to customers on some newer technologies and newer products that we had that sales couldn't actually understand how to explain. And
Mm.
so I think what I learned very early on is you can't walk in and sound like somebody who is deep in the technology and the customer can't understand what you're saying and what you're trying to explain. And so it really required me to break things down. And
Mm.
from that point forward, it's been a matter of how do you break down and simplify things? It doesn't come from a philosophy or from
Okay.
a, yeah.
Well, there's something there one day because I studied both these and it's a really cool way to look at it. But it's clear, I think, based on your company's results, it's clear that when people understand what to do, they feel like, hey, this is going to contribute to progress, they get on board with it. They drive it. And I love the fact that you said MoneyGram. Well, the one thing I noticed immediately is they had passion, but it was like, hey, how do we channel that in a productive way when the odds are against us and everybody's overwhelmed? And you're able to create these channels, the simplification meetings, and also this idea of change in 180 days. I love that because it's almost like it's manageable. Like 365 days seems a little bit too far away. A week doesn't sound like we're going to do that much. But 180 days, like in 6 months, could I see myself making so enough meaningful impact in something to move the needle? And was there something that you guys did in 180 days? Like that was the magical thing. You're like, you know what? That's going to be that's going to be the time frame that works for us.
I don't think it was so much the challenge at the time of us just making changes faster and making product innovations faster than our competitor, and we had to get out to market and you know there were the very first thing we did was a point of sale product called Form Free, which allowed customers to do more self-service capabilities. That was followed up by products that we did that rolled out at Walmart and other stores, and then this notion of what I called the Visa MasterCard model, which was doing transaction processing for person to person money transfer, but doing it across integrating with banks and post banks. So we could leverage
Hmm.
thousands of points of presence, thousands of points of sale without us having to deploy any capital or any other additional capabilities.
Yes.
All of those came back to back to back. And it started to just show that we could we could actually compete with the larger competitor and we could win some large accounts globally.
Well, congrats on that. That's it's kind of fun working for an insurgent organization. You didn't call yourself insurgent, but it sounds like you are because you've got some big ones that you're going against, and it kind of gives you that edge every day
Yeah.
to know who you're competing with. It's been a fun one today. I got so many questions. I'm like, but we have little time thinking about. So get your. So I like to ask the crystal ball question about AI and what you're seeing because I think you have an interesting background because you're sort of at this intersection of so many different industries. Uh, what's your advice for leaders who are really trying to wrap their mind around the vision for AI in the future? It sounds like you hit it out of the ballpark during the mortgage meltdown with the crystal ball. So I'm sure you're going to be 100% accurate with AI. Like, where is this? What is? And I don't think AI is a crisis for everybody, but it's an opportunity, as we've talked about. What's it look like down the road?
I think first of all, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, a lot of our customers, a lot of industry people. I think we are underestimating its impact in a very near term in the business world. I think people that say it's going to be 5 to 10 years are off by a magnitude of 5 years. So
Wow.
I think it's going to be
Okay.
3 to 5 years where you're already starting to see adoption on things that are just efficiency mechanisms within, for example, the Microsoft suite and Copilot and things like that. I think what you're
Mhm.
going to start to see is AI, especially more the agentic AI versus the generative AI, start to evolve. We have this philosophy of an autonomous building, of basically getting to a point where the building is self-healing. It's going to take time to put the technology into every building, but newer buildings are being built and retrofitted with this type
Wow.
of technology, where the building itself can actually detect what is wrong, and to the degree that it can be automated, it can automate the actual, for example, directing HVAC information so that you're not trying to cool an area where there's a leak somewhere in the HVAC or something until you can get a technician out there. There will always be the need, I believe, this notion that some positions are going to go completely away. That may happen, but I
Hmm.
think what there will be is there'll be a need for specialists, for example, that'll still have to go in and turn a wrench and fix a piece of equipment in a building, in a factory, wherever it is that we do business at Accruent. We do business across a broad suite of
Yeah.
of oil and gas, chemical mining, buildings, corporate, higher ed. There will always be the need to go actually repair physical things. But I think this notion that companies have been trying to go from multiple, in the technology world, you call it multiple panes of glass, to a single pane of glass, will actually go away to no pane of glass.
Hmm.
And it'll actually be the only thing you're being informed by the AI is what it already did on your behalf. And I think as that goes on, there will be focus more on the specialists that say, what do we do in those scenarios? How do we
Hmm.
innovate? How are we building products or new processes and things like that? The AIs will be really taking over more of that work. I mean, you already have autonomous vehicles. The power in most buildings is much more powerful than most autonomous vehicles at this point in time. So
Yeah.
you're going to see a world that is
Yeah.
fundamentally shifting from how it currently operates. And I think that's not 5 to 10 years away. I think it's 3 to 5 years away, if not sooner, because this pace, the companies that are on the forefront that want to take advantage of this and take advantage of the efficiencies of it are already starting to look into it. They will already start taking, and it will become a competitive differentiator for them. And if
Hmm.
you're a service provider providing services in the built environment, in the world of buildings and things like that, it's going to be a lot less hands-on than what we currently have today, eyes on glass. It's going to be
Yeah.
more
Hmm.
things that are just moving forward and self-healing.
I've never heard that term, a self healing building, but it makes sense. I mean, if the data is there, the people are there, the knowledge is there, why not?
Right.
And I love the way they are approaching that. Wow. Well, Richard, it's been a very fun interview today. I'm going to turn it over for you for the last point. What's your parting thought for our thousands of listeners?
I would say, I think everything that you bring together, all of the things that we talked about today kind of lead to one thing. Have a passion for your company, have your employees have a passion for the company and for the products that they produce. And if you have that, all of those other things will come. But it is
Love it.
really believing in and having the passion for what you do.
Thanks for coming on and lead the team, Richard.